Coming up on Bridge City News, the entire country is still trying to come to grips with why a man in Nova Scotia went on a shooting rampage, killing more than 17 people. The Saskatchewan Health Authority is backing off on its demand that churches cannot hold services at drive-in movie theaters. And the University of Lethbridge announced that it is discontinuing its men's and women's hockey programs. We will explain why.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Investigators are still continuing to piece together what happened as the deadliest shooting in Canadian history unfolded over the weekend in Nova Scotia. An RCMP officer, an elementary school teacher, and more than 16 others died when alleged shooter, 51-year-old Gabriel Wortman, opened fire in the small town of PORTAPIQUE, Nova Scotia. Police shot and killed the gunman at a gas station in the nearby town of Enfield.
Following multiple 911 calls, Nova Scotia RCMP members responded to a firearms call to a PORTAPIQUE residence in Colchester County. When police arrived at the scene, members located several casualties inside and outside of the home. They did not, however, locate the suspect. This was a very quickly evolving situation and a chaotic scene. Many units responded, including emergency response teams and police dog services. We also received support from other police services, continue to receive support from other police services, especially Halifax Regional Police.
Residents in that small community of PORTAPIQUE, Nova Scotia, say they knew Wortman, who worked as a denturist, and were completely surprised by his actions.
Well, it's heartbreaking and scary to think that somebody in your community has gone to that, doing that the tragic things that he done, and he's hurt a lot of people. He had his dentistry in Dartmouth.
Yes, I know where it is, yeah.
And my neighbor, she just had her teeth done by him, the plates done, a couple of months ago. And she said he seemed pleasant that day, and who knows what made it happen. I never thought that that would happen in our community.
I'm very surprised that, I never thought he would do something like that. From what I knew of him, he was quiet, gentle, he's very easy to talk to. I don't know what to say, it's very depressing. To see somebody do something like this.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says there will be a virtual vigil on Friday evening so the country can support the families of those who lost their lives from this terrible tragedy. The federal Liberals and the opposition Conservatives remain at odds over plans to reopen the House of Commons during the COVID-19 pandemic. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says it would be irresponsible to do so, but Tory leader Andrew Scheer said there needs to be 3 in-person sittings per week. He says Parliament is an essential service.
We're in a situation right now where our public health authorities, our experts, and common sense tells us we need to continue to limit our movements. We need to continue to work from home. We need to continue to do everything we can to ensure that people are kept safe from further spread of this pandemic.
Negotiations are still ongoing. I remain hopeful that the government will agree to our common sense proposal to continue to hold in-person sittings. We believe these sittings should happen 3 times each week. Parliament must remain open so that we can improve government programs and policies and get better results for Canadians.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he was upset when the government discovered at least 2 million N95 respirator masks were thrown out last year because they had expired. Trudeau also said there are challenges in securing equipment now.
Over the past weeks, we've been engaged in unprecedented efforts, collaborating with partners and friends around the world to ensure that we can get the PPE and medical equipment so necessary for Canadians on the front lines in hospitals and across the country. That is what we continue to do. We have teams on the ground in China and elsewhere to coordinate the arrival of the departure and arrival of shipments. We have had challenges with those shipments as the global competition for these items are fierce. We will continue to work as best we can to ensure that we continue to deliver all the necessary equipment to our heroes working on the front lines.
Of all of the wild, unprecedented swings in the financial market since the COVID-19 pandemic broke, none has been more jaw-dropping than today's collapse of oil. The price on futures contract for West Texas crude that is due to expire tomorrow fell into negative territory. At one point, it was just over negative $37 US per barrel. Sellers were actually paying buyers to take oil off their hands. Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Deena Henshaw, said 4 more Albertans died from the coronavirus today, bringing our provincial total to 59. 2 were in long-term care facilities. 1 person was a worker from the Cargill meat processing facility in High River, and the 4th person was from the Edmonton zone.
We have slightly less cases today than in the past few days, with 105 new cases of COVID-19 in Alberta in the last 24 hours. As you know, we have expanded testing access to anyone with COVID symptoms. In addition, we have started testing even asymptomatic residents and staff in long-term care sites with outbreaks, and are offering testing to asymptomatic individuals in certain other outbreak sites in order to enhance control measures. As of today, we have tested over 100,000 people in the province, with 3,718 COVID tests completed in the last 24 hours. Today's new cases bring the total number of Alberta's COVID-19 cases to 2,908.
There are currently 156 cases in the South Zone. Henshaw added that 1,230 people have also recovered from COVID-19. Across Canada, there are still 38,291 confirmed cases of the virus. The province of Alberta has laid out a new funding framework for physicians, and some doctors are not happy about it. The government can lower doctors' billing fees without consulting them first. Alberta doctors want to make sure that they have adequate staff to combat COVID-19, and rural physicians say they will be impacted the most. The Alberta Medical Association says that the change in fees could mean that some doctors' offices may be forced to close. The Rural Sustainability Group surveyed rural physicians across the province, and close to 50% of the 300 doctors said they've already been forced to decrease their hospital-based services by July.
So these are all ideas coming from government about how to save money in our healthcare system without understanding the implications that has for patient care. And so my main message is that they really need to involve physicians and get back to an agreement with the AMA so that we can find something that works for everybody, because we can provide savings. We just need to do it in a way that doesn't hurt patients.
Doctors in the province are saying they hope this new funding framework can be put on hold until the COVID-19 pandemic is over. As the coronavirus pandemic deepens across the globe, Lethbridge City Council is hoping for more leeway when it comes to paying property taxes.
It is only on the education portion of the property tax, so they have cancelled their planned increase of the education property tax, and they have allowed a deferral for non-residential customers only. The balance of municipal taxes would have to either be levied as planned, or else any deferrals would be at the expense to taxpayers, the remaining taxpayers. So if we incurred additional debt, if we exercised our line of credit and incurred additional costs, then those costs would be the responsibility of the municipality. We wouldn't be compensated for those by the province, and there's limited deferrals.
The coronavirus has changed the way we use taxis. As Micah Quinn explains now, a cab company in Lethbridge is going above and beyond to make sure their customers are protected during the pandemic.
Michael Arend is the operations manager for 94 Cabs, and he says the company has stringent rules for cleaning down their cabs and making sure customers feel safe and protected against COVID-19.
I'm going to get out of the car and I'm going to clean the handle of the outside of the car, and I'm going to sterilize the inside and wipe down the seat belt, the buckles, the door handles, pretty much all the hard surfaces, and any point of contact that a previous occupant may have had.
Arend wants to make sure that 94 Cabs is providing the best customer service possible.
Probably more communication and just being very specific that we'll open the doors and close the doors. We'll control opening and closing the windows, and just try to make sure that we can give them the best safe possible ride for them. Most people take it pretty serious, and so they're happy to be able to get into a car that they've seen being cleaned right in front of their eyes.
Now that COVID-19 has become a pandemic, He says that customers seem to appreciate taking a taxi more compared to public transit.
It's an interesting situation, right? A lot of customers enjoy the fact that they can get in and have a private carrier take them as opposed to having to do public transit.
Michael Lorenz says that 94 Cabs will continue to clean their taxis and make sure that they provide a safe customer experience in the fight against COVID-19. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
We've all experienced one-way streets and roads, but how about one-way paths? In an effort to limit the spread of COVID-19, the City of Lethbridge is encouraging people to walk one way at some of the parks, including Nicholas Sharon and where BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly is at Henderson Lake.
People can be seen jogging, walking their dogs, and pushing strollers. There are signs around the park marked one way in order to encourage physical distancing. In a statement released by the city recently, they said that if you cannot plan a route that follows a loop or uses multiple pathways and sidewalks, please maintain a 2-meter physical distance in order to ensure safety for everyone.
The Gujarati Society of Lethbridge held a recent fundraiser, and it resulted in donations to support those working to help during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Initially, we wanted to do some cash donation and some food donation, so we knew that there is a service which provides meal to the seniors who cannot get out of the house. So we started doing the fundraising, and good thing was we did fundraise $2,000 for them, which we just gave them with a check. So we donated that, and then we knew that Canadian Mental Health Society is the services that, they have got around 50 staff members who go out in the community in this COVID-19 situation to help all the people who are like homeless, who don't have a place to stay, and they provide food and all that stuff and any help that they can. So these guys are putting their lives to danger as well. So we thought, let's do something good gesture for them too.
The United Way in Lethbridge is $10,000 richer thanks to a donation from Heaven Hills Brands, the owners of Black Velvet Distillery in Lethbridge. In total, the company donated $400,000 to support local programs in the fight against COVID-19 in the United States, Ireland, and here in the Windy City. In addition, Heaven Hill announced that part of the operation would be dedicated to producing, bottling, and distributing hand sanitizer. It'll mostly go to support frontline healthcare workers and first responders dealing with the coronavirus. The Western Hockey League announced today that defenseman Kalen Addison has been named as the Eastern Conference Defenseman of the Year. In 50 games this season, the 20-year-old had 10 goals and 42 assists for 52 points. He also had a career-high +7 rating. Addison, who's a Minnesota Wild prospect, represented Canada both the World Juniors and the CIBC Canada-Russia Series. He helped Canada win gold at the World Juniors. The winner of the Bill Hunter Memorial Trophy for the WHL Defenseman of the Year will be announced on May 19th. The University of Lethbridge announced today that it is discontinuing its men's and women's varsity hockey programs. Officials say it is tied into 3 successive years of reductions to its operating grant. A total of 52 student athletes, along with coaches and recruits, have been impacted by this decision.
All of those things, of course, run through your head as you're thinking about, whether or not in the end this is the right decision to make. And so the emotions, of course, were significant. I can tell you, just as recently as yesterday, I had a follow-up with my senior team to say, are we really doing the right thing? Is this really the right decision? So it was very much down to the wire that we, struggled with this decision, and so we should have, because this is a difficult decision.
In a release today, the U of L said it's committed to supporting student athletes and will honor scholarship commitments if they choose to continue to study at the university. In order to balance the budget, the university already cut 19 positions in November and then eliminated an additional 42 positions across several departments last month. Graduation ceremonies can be the highlight of the school year for students, whether they're in high school, college, or university. This year, around 1,500 students are graduating from the University of Lethbridge. As Jeanette Rocher reports, despite the spring convocation being cancelled, the university is finding an alternate way to celebrate the occasion with its graduating students.
For most university students, graduation marks the end of an era, a time to celebrate an accomplishment.
It's kind of one of the things you dream of once you enter university, is to cross the stage.
Jen Biglin is one of the roughly 1,500 graduates completing degrees this spring who were supposed to don their cap and gown and then walk across the stage to receive their diploma. Then COVID-19 happened.
I was like, there's not going to be any convocation. Like, there's too many people in one building that they're not going to allow it. which kind of sucked. So it was a little disappointing.
We were all disappointed initially. It was a sad announcement to have to make.
Kathleen Massey is the University of Lethbridge Associate Vice President for Students. She says the U of L still wanted to do something special for their grads.
We're going to provide them with convocation and a box so that they can celebrate with their families. We'll send them a box filled with a parchment and the cap and the tassel. We hope that they'll take a moment to put on their cap and hold their diploma and take a photo and share it on social media. We'll give them a special hashtag to go along with their post. And then as well, they're invited to come back at any future convocation and over the next 3 years to walk the stage.
With this solution, it's been all positive. Like, it's still very exciting. They're like, even though it's like, I'll still be able to graduate with my graduating class, because we can all plan with your friends on when you want to graduate, and you can still make the best day out of it.
For Bridge City News, I'm Jeanette Roche.
Former Conservative candidate for Lethbridge West, Carrie Flatlaw, has been named to the Lethbridge College Board of Governors. The college says it's for a 3-year term which began on March 17th. Flatlaw brings more than 15 years of business and entrepreneurial experience to her board role. She's currently a residential real estate agent and team leader for Carrie Flatlaw and Associates at RE/MAX. The Saskatchewan Health Authority has backed off prohibiting a church in Nipawin, Saskatchewan from hosting a drive-in movie theater service. The Saskatchewan government said it will recognize the right for churches to hold such services with appropriate safety precautions. Last Tuesday, the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms challenged the Health Authority for its initial decision categorizing drive-in religious services as mass gatherings in violation of Saskatchewan's public health order. The Justice Centre argued that the Nipawin Apostolic Church had carefully planned a drive-in Easter service in the same format as a drive-in movie theater, ensuring that people would remain in their vehicles and that social distancing would be observed. Car windows would remain closed and people would flash their lights instead of cracking open their windows to yell, "Amen." Churches here in Western Canada are not the only ones hosting drive-in movie theater services. There's also a church in Houston, Texas doing the same thing, the Grace Woodlands Church. Congregants show up with their car horns, lights, and even bring their own elements for communion.
This was Sunday worship at Houston's Grace Woodlands Church, pre-coronavirus. But the new reality for this Texas congregation is quite different.
But here we are, by an invisible virus, forced to make changes on the fly as to how we do ministry.
When people honk, to be honest, I wasn't sure what to think of it at first, because we didn't ask people to do it. We didn't say, you should honk here. People just started doing it, and then I think it's just their way of responding. You see people honking, you see people flashing their lights. I even joked that on Palm Sunday, it was great because you were able to see some people, instead of waving palm branches, they were waving their windshield wipers.
Because the cross, it is the great pivot point of history.
This Easter sermon included a time for sharing the Lord's Supper.
And there would be one common remedy for man's position. It would be the shed blood of Jesus.
Congregants stayed in their cars and brought their own bread and wine or juice.
These have been very interesting days, and obviously if someone had told us even 3 months ago that we would be where we are, facing the challenges we are today, in terms of pastoral ministry, churches in America, I'm not quite sure people would have actually believed that.
With no end to the coronavirus pandemic in sight, scenes like this drive-in service may become a new normal, at least for now. Sherry May for the Global News Alliance.
Lots of sunshine and warm again today, feeling more and more like spring every day, isn't it? But will it last? A complete look at the short and long-range forecasts are on deck. It was a beautiful spring-like day again in the Windy City today. Jeanette Roche is here with a complete look at the forecast. Jeanette, the mild temperatures should be sticking around for quite some time.
Yeah, Hal, well, I am happy to report that these lovely temperatures will be remaining throughout the week and into the coming weekend, as we had a beautiful 18-degree day today with lots of sunshine. Tonight's overnight low is 7 degrees. We're going to be seeing some wind gusts overnight, though, up to 60K. And then into tomorrow, a beautiful sunny day with 21 degrees. We're going to be seeing some wind tomorrow, though, too. Gusts up to 70K per hour. And also, we can finally start reporting the UV index, which is 6 tomorrow, or high. Tomorrow night's overnight low 4 degrees. And then as we start looking further into the weekend of the 5-day forecast, we're going to be seeing much the same. Lots of these teen temperatures, high of 16 for both Wednesday and Thursday. Mix of scattered clouds there on Wednesday. Lots of sunshine Thursday, and then a high of 14 on Friday. And look at next weekend, 19 degrees expected for both Saturday and Sunday with some scattered clouds there. So not too shabby if you ask me. We're definitely getting into those average temperatures for this time of year. And as the almanac reports, the high average this time of year is 14 degrees. We're definitely reaching that and beyond. The overnight lows is 0, so we're right in that range as well. The high temperature on this day was recorded back in 1980. It was 27 degrees. The lowest temperature was -9. That was back in 1951. The sun rose this morning at 6:28 a.m. and it set at 8:32 p.m. So that's just a little bit over 14 hours of daylight, which is fantastic. Let's take a look at the temperatures for tomorrow. The highs across the nation, starting with the west coast. We're going to be seeing rain tomorrow in Victoria and Vancouver with highs of 14 and 15 degrees. Lots of sunshine across Alberta tomorrow. 17 degrees is the high in Edmonton and a lovely 19 degrees expected in Calgary. Much the same for Saskatchewan with lots of sunshine. A high of 20 degrees expected over in Regina. Saskatoon's high tomorrow, 15 degrees. Bit of a different story though as we start moving further west. Winnipeg's going to be getting some snowfall with a high of 3 degrees. We're going to be seeing kind of the same situation happening further east in Ontario and Quebec. Snowfall expected in Toronto, high of 3 degrees, high of 4 expected in Ottawa with a mix of snow and rain, and showers expected tomorrow in Montreal with a high of 6 degrees. Now looking to the Maritime, sunshine expected in Fredericton with a high of 10. Lots of sunshine also in Charlottetown with a high of 4 degrees. We're going to be seeing a mix of rain and snow though for both Halifax and St. John's. High of 10 in Halifax, but St. John's high tomorrow only 2 degrees. There you go, Hal. That is your weather forecast.
Today's weather highlights are brought to you by Dan's LA Carpet Cleaning. Residential and commercial carpet and furniture cleaning since 1989.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney says he wants Ottawa to support our province's energy industry more as oil prices continue to plummet. He made the plea in a tweet after the price of Western Canada Select dropped below 0 last night. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced a $1.7 billion investment to clean up orphaned and inactive wells in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia. The money will help create jobs and allow energy companies to avoid bankruptcy along with hitting environmental targets. An analyst says Husky Energy's decision to halt production of 80,000 barrels per day takes the total reduction in Canadian crude output to around 365,000 barrels a day. The Calgary-based company also announced it is cutting its 2020 capital budget by a further $700 million. That is after an earlier cut of $900 million in capital and $100 million in other spending earlier this year. Montreal-based aerospace company CAE says it is going to manufacture and supply 10,000 ventilators for the Canadian government. It says it is finalizing the design and testing of its new ventilator right now, with the first unit to be delivered to health authorities for certification next month. CAE is also recalling all 1,500 remaining temporarily laid-off employees thanks to the federal emergency wage subsidy. Shopify has announced it will be providing financial relief to cash-strapped businesses using its e-commerce products without having to take on debt. It is offering interest-free cash advances from $500 to $200,000 per eligible merchant to help offset the impact of the coronavirus. The Ottawa-based company says the funds will be paid back through future sales. Shopify says the funding will fill in gaps in COVID-19 relief that banks are not satisfying and promptly provide businesses with the cash flow they need. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 28 points on the day to 14,388. The Dow was down 592 points to finish at 23,650. The S&P 500 was down 51 points to 2823, and the Nasdaq was down 89 to finish the day at 8560. Oil went into negative territory, down $31.37 per barrel to finish at negative $13.10 per barrel. Natural gas was up 19 cents to $1.64. Gold was up 95 cents to $16.9645 an ounce, and silver was down a cent to $15.30 an ounce. Wheat is at $245 per metric ton, barley's at $239, canola's at $4.58, and corn is at $243 per metric ton. Live cattle were down $1.20 to $85.10. Feeder cattle were down $2 to $117.28, and lean hogs were up $2.53 to $46.40. The Canadian dollar was up slightly on the day to finish at 70.73 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, many Canadians are still in shock following a weekend mass shooting which left at least 18 people dead in Nova Scotia, including the gunman. The killing spree began Saturday night in the seaside village of PORTAPIQUE and ended at a gas station 100 kilometers away, just outside of Halifax. The shooter, 51-year-old Gabriel Wortman, died in a confrontation with police at that gas station. The death toll exceeds the 14 who were killed at École Polytechnique in Montreal in 1989, making it the deadliest killing spree in Canadian history. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit global markets very hard. Many are wondering what will happen to their investments and pensions. Financial advisor RUSTON joins me next to discuss what money may or may not have been lost during this pandemic. That interview is coming up shortly. With the current unrest and uncertainty in global financial markets, many are wondering what to do to protect themselves from taking a serious financial hit. Joining me now to talk about it from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan is RUSTON. He's the CEO of Purpose Financial Corporation in Saskatchewan. Aaron has an MBA and has been voted as one of the top 5 financial advisors in Canada 5 years in a row. Aaron, welcome to BCN.
Thanks, Hal. It's always an absolute delight to do anything in association with you guys. So thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Now, the financial markets, as we've seen, have taken a big hit as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Can you really explain how the markets work, and why is the COVID-19 pandemic causing stocks to drop significantly?
Sure. Well, really what has happened in this particular situation is really markets tend to rise and they tend to fall over time. You have bear markets and bull markets, so downs and ups. What has really hit this market in particular is the uncertainty that this pandemic has brought about. So when uncertainty sets into the market, people start thinking they're going to lose their jobs, meaning they're not spending money, meaning they're not getting out and doing what they do, and that throws people into a bit of a panic. So what has happened now, we've seen a historic drop in the market. We've seen other market drops over the years. This one was relatively quick. So that's really what is happening now, right? The fear comes on. You add that on top of that, the oil prices. I don't like to talk about to people in Alberta about oil prices, but we see the big conflict between Saudi Arabia and Russia and that, and it's just it's the perfect storm in a lot of ways. But remember, storms pass, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we see West Texas Intermediate under $20 a barrel. Historically low gas prices right now as well. That's the joke, I guess. You know, it's like, hey, have you seen the price of gas, how great it is? But then in Alberta, have you seen how the price of gas, how bad it is? You know,
yeah,
I mean,
isn't it something?
Yeah, it's really something. So where's the smart money? Is it maybe in precious metals, putting it in gold? Some industry analysts say we could see gold hit maybe $2,000 an ounce.
Well, it's currently trading about $1,716 an ounce right now or so. You know what? Gold is just really another equity investment. Not any different than stock markets, cash, bonds, or whatever. It's just purely one more place to put your money. Now, in the past, gold was kind of the sanctuary where people ran to and the market started doing wild and crazy things. That and cash. Right now, we've seen the price of gold spike over the last little bit again, and some other precious metals. But you know what? Just my perspective and what we're seeing, gold prices will relax too over the next bit. As markets start to come back, money starts to roll back into a more liquid market, gold prices probably will drop back down. So don't get caught in that high gold pricing trap as well.
Aaron, some people are really concerned that their investments and their pensions are going to be lost with what's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic. Do you offer any insight into this? Should we really be concerned about that?
Well, I guess it really depends on where you're at in your journey. What chapter are you in your life? Are you going to be drawing on your money fairly soon? What is the asset allocation within your portfolio? When your advisor sat down, and I hope everyone listening has consulted with a financial advisor. And that was not a paid advertisement, by the way. I'm just saying that you really should, if you're at that point where you're starting to draw money out of your pensions and your pension has not been adjusted accordingly to take advantage of maybe some of the more stable investments right now, yeah, you're at a risk of not losing it all, but certainly seeing the values drop, but even for a short-term basis, I would say. So not fear, not panic, but concern. Be talking to your advisor and saying, hey, you know what? If we missed that drop, what are we doing now to make sure I'm going to be gaining some money back here when things turn around?
And if you have the cash, isn't right now a good time to buy?
We would tend to hold off. We've seen a good recovery. The markets have dropped about, I believe, just over 30% from their highs of February. But we've seen a good bounce off the bottom. And in fact, over the last couple of days, we've seen some pretty good rise again in it. I would say we're probably going to see, and this is not my professional opinion. We have lots of economists and stuff that work with us in this. We're probably going to see a bit of a contraction again coming back on. With this COVID, they talk about this second wave, whatever that means or whatever that looks like. And we think, you know, it will pull back a little bit. I would tend to hold on. Or if you have cash inside, what I tend to do with our clients here and my partners do is we'll start to move 1/3 of our cash in at a time. So buy good solid investments that are down. Maybe they're down 40, 50%, some of very solid stocks. Buy in 1/3 now because they're still good stocks. They've just got caught in that oxygen sucking vortex that's pulled everything down. Buy in now, let them rise a bit and just monitor it. That's what I would do.
You know, some people have expressed concern as well, Aaron, that banks are going to crumble. Is that even possible? What would that take for that to actually happen?
Well, you see, our banks are really more secure, so to speak, than the U.S. and other banks. For one, our Bank of Canada is really supported by the government of Canada behind the scenes, so to speak. They're the main level of borrowing for Bank of Canada. Then it goes from Bank of Canada down into our chartered bank system. So we have a two-tiered system. We have banks like TD and CIBC and Scotia and RBC and BMO that are our Category 1 or Tier 1 banks. Then we have the banks underneath, the Tier 2 banks. So they're secure. They're far more secure than some of the other country banking systems that we see. That is for certain. They are susceptible to market bounces, as can anyone that has owned stocks in the banks can attest to. But you know what? They will come back. If you think about it, Hal, every transaction you or I do, or our companies do, are channeled through the banks one way or another, sometimes 4 or 5 times. Thus the big profits, thus the returns. They will come back. I wouldn't worry about them collapsing, that's for sure. But their values may well be contract even a little bit further than we've seen them so far.
Are there some business sectors that are really poised to make a solid run with this new economy and reality that we're living in now?
Yeah, we really believe there are. Not only on a global sector like geographic, but if we just bring it down to overall, we're looking very strongly. Once interest rates start to come back up a little bit, which they will, we feel the financial sector is going to show well. Banks, life insurance companies make very good money as interest rates start to come back. The financial sector, as we just talked about, Hal, is hit hard right now because bank stocks are down overall. Industrials, things like lumber companies, tool making companies, and those as building starts again, it's slowed down now, but it will come back. Consumer discretionary, leisure, travel. Right now we can't go anywhere. Oil prices and gas prices are at historic lows, but we can't drive anywhere, right? It's kind of ironic in that. So those will come back. Technology, we believe, what this has proven to us, even with what we're doing right now, it proves us to, again, how important technology is becoming in our lives. Zoom, Skype, other Facebook, all of those things are our way to communicate. And I think as the demographic continues to expand, meaning even the older sector are getting involved, those values are going to start to rise as well. So that's kind of a Reader's Digest snapshot of where we feel the growth is going to be over the next year or so as things start getting back to normal.
Where do you see the agriculture sector headed? The grains, cattle, a lot of livestock?
Yeah. Well, that's a tough one because our firm, we do a lot of work in the agricultural sector, whether it be with dairy or grain farming, and prices have been pressed down for a long, long time, not only in Canada but on a global basis, demand, and now with some of the slowdowns in railways and all of that type of stuff too over the last months before this. You know what? We feel it will recover. It is going to be a tough haul. I deal in reality, and it's going to be a tough haul for the next little bit, which is too bad because it's really the breadbasket, literally, of our country is right here, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and stuff. But you know what? We feel it will recover. The markets just need to open up. The economy needs to loosen up again. Doors and stores need to open, and then hopefully things will get rolling back.
Aaron, is there some strategic tax planning that businesses can really do to minimize their losses?
Well, right now, if you're in an open position, meaning let's say you have a non-tax-free savings account, non-RSP type investment, so just cash in stocks. Okay. Now there have been some sectors that have been hit even more dramatically than others. So what we say is, depending on your information coming from your accountant and all those things, we're actually talking to people sometimes about selling off for tax losses. Okay. And what that means is, if you have a stock, you bought it at $100, it's at $70 now, and you say, well, it's probably not going to come back for quite some time, or that widget sector that it was in no longer even exists. Look at maybe selling that off, taking that loss, which is a capital loss, and down the road, as you get capital gains on your other stocks, applying it towards that. And the thing about capital losses is we can only use them against capital gains, but when we pass away, I know I shouldn't be talking like that, but when we pass away, capital loss can even be offset against other taxable income in that year as well. So lots of uses, but that's stuff you should be talking to your accountant about and your financial advisor.
What about the Canadian real estate market, Aaron? Is now a really good time to buy? I've noticed in Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, even here in Lethbridge, it seems like the market's gone a little soft.
Yeah, which is really interesting, Hal, because we were actually just on a conference call the other day about where the real estate market, both commercial and residential, is going to go, and they're still showing a rise of about 6.2% from 2020 into 2021. Now that seems pretty dramatic to me, right? But again, I'm not the real estate expert or anything. They feel that it's going to be some declines, and sorry to say this again to Albertans and Saskatchewanians, some slight declines in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Newfoundland, and Labrador. Ontario, Quebec, those are supposed to see some rise, but overall they do see some positives in the real estate market. Right now with this COVID, with the real estate and rental incomes coming off, it's been a little tight because of loss of jobs, but they still see over time a rise. I don't know if 6.2%, that's what we were told. That's pretty aggressive from my perspective, but I do believe we'll still see prices rise on a broad base right across Canada.
Aaron, labs around the world are frantically working right now, overtime, the scientists, to come up with a vaccine for this COVID-19. Labs in Israel, across Canada, especially in Winnipeg, in the United States. Should we maybe consider investing our money in some of the pharmaceutical companies?
Yeah, I would say that's actually one of the areas that we are looking into as well, because Gilead today, for instance, is one of the stocks that there's some hope that they may have found something that may have some impact on the virus itself. So yes, I believe there will be growth in that side. The biggest thing with investing in pharmaceutical companies is they have patents, they have those types of things on drugs, but after a number of years, those patents run out, and suddenly you get generic. So the thing is with pharmaceutical companies, get the run when they have something that's solid, that addresses something that is serious, broad-based condition. But they're a brief run. You take the run and then you pull out, because as their patents run out and those things, generic stuff starts coming back on, their value drops.
How about investing in some of the grocers, especially right now with the food supply, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, companies like Costco and those types of things. And again, I don't mean to mention names. This is no advertisement for any of them. But companies like Costco and that type of stuff, they're the bulk type buying place. But those types of things, I think in the future will continue to grow, as will some of the other suppliers. Now, I believe, Hal, that we're going to see a change in how stores are operated, how they deal with their people coming in and leaving, because people will be more aware of what's going on and more fearful, I think, for at least the next bit. Even though we may see the numbers dropping of new cases and recovery numbers going up, I think grocery stores, those types of things are going to have to make some changes. That's for sure. Keep an eye on it, and we believe there will be some growth in them, because I think there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand. And as soon as things start relaxing a bit, we're going to see leisure and entertainment and even shopping. You know, maybe people will buy 2 bags of broccoli, not just one now, that type of stuff. So there's going to be more, I believe. Yeah.
And toilet paper, don't forget, we have to invest in that too.
Wasn't that interesting?
Now, you're also a man of faith, Aaron. Do you have any thoughts on how to really weather out this financial storm while keeping a proper perspective on the big picture?
You know what? I think sometimes as a Christian and a Christian financial advisor, I have to say sometimes as Christians, we throw around the whole cliche saying of God's going to take care of it. Okay. And God will take care of things. He has the best for you. He has the best for me overall. But you know, he is in control. He gave us a brain for a reason. And that was to think things out, make good decisions, make good plans in every part of your life, whether it's for your physical fitness, your financial fitness, your overall health. So I think the Bible is very clear on how we are to deal with our finances, how we're to deal with our health. And he said, you know, the Bible says there will be storms. I'm paraphrasing. That's the Aaron Ruston version, okay? There will be storms and those things. But I believe, I know, God will see us through all of this. Be strong, be diligent, and stay safe. God's got you in his hands. He's taking care of all of this.
Stay safe and keep the faith. Aaron Ruston, the CEO of Purpose Financial Corporation of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks, Hal. Always a great honor to be here.
The term medical assistance in dying or MAID is now being widely used in place of the term assisted suicide. The result, however, is still the same. Ottawa is now considering expanding the boundaries put in place to safeguard the practice. Joining me now to talk about it is Alex Schadenberg, Executive Director of Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. Alex, welcome back to BCN.
It's great to be with you, Hal.
Alex, a court in Quebec recently struck down the section of Canada's euthanasia law requiring natural death be reasonably foreseeable before a person qualifies for death by euthanasia. Can you share a bit of the backstory on this and the court's reasoning in striking down the law?
Yes, so when Canada legalized euthanasia in June of 2016, one of the requirements of the law was that somebody's natural death had to be reasonably foreseeable. So they allowed euthanasia for physical or psychological suffering, but one of the components was that your natural death had to be reasonably foreseeable, meaning terminal illness. Now that was an odd definition anyway. Nonetheless, in September, a Quebec court struck down the requirement that natural death had to be reasonably foreseeable. So by striking down that requirement, that changes the law because you would not have to be terminally ill. But also what it meant was that if the law allowed euthanasia for physical or psychological suffering, the only caveat was that you had to be terminally ill. Once you remove that, then it also then clearly allows euthanasia for psychological suffering alone. And this is a difficulty because clearly Canadians are not interested in euthanasia for, mental illness, depression, etc.
Now, the federal government's response to this court decision is Bill C-7. Some are saying this bill is really a two-tiered law. Your thoughts on this?
Right. So what the federal government did is that the court decision came down in September, and that was during the election. And the federal government decided not to appeal the court decision. So by not appealing the court decision, then the court decision becomes law. So they have to amend the law, they say. So what they've done is they've come out with this Bill C-7. Now, Bill C-7 is a two-tier law. It does two things. They kept that natural death must be reasonably foreseeable definition, even though it's sort of awkward. And it really lacks meaning in many ways, because natural death being reasonably foreseeable, well, hell, I think most of our natural deaths are reasonably foreseeable. Nonetheless, it depends, I guess, how you define it. But what it means is that if you are not terminally ill, then you could have euthanasia instantaneously. So what they did is they said that there would be no waiting period. The original law required a 10-day waiting period, and they said under this new Bill C-7 the 10-day waiting period would be eliminated for people whose natural death was reasonably foreseeable, who were deemed to be terminally ill. But for those who are not terminally ill, they put in a 90-day waiting period. Now, this is a serious problem, actually, because our Canadian courts tend not to deal with inequality within the law very well. It is my opinion that if they pass Bill C-7 as it's written, that the bill will be challenged in the courts very quickly because there's a natural inequality within the law, meaning that if you're terminally ill, you can die immediately, but if you're not terminally ill, you have to wait 90 days. Now let's go one step further. The problem with eliminating the 10-day waiting period is that means that if I'm not having a bad day, and let's put this in a human context, I could have a difficult medical condition, but I'm now going through a bad day. Let's say I got a bad prognosis, bad news. Well, I can then die the same day as I request euthanasia. It gives me no chance or opportunity to change my mind or no opportunity to have a good day.
Now, Bill C-7 changes the law to now allow doctors and nurse practitioners to lethally inject an incompetent person, as long as that person consented to death, as you were talking about, by lethal injection before becoming incompetent. Do you see any issues with that?
Yeah, so the other thing they did, so first of all, Bill C-7, in my opinion, is a very big problem. And I'll give you a couple of reasons. One is it's gone far beyond what the Quebec court decision said. The Quebec court decision simply said that your natural death being reasonably foreseeable was going to be struck because, once again, it created what they called an inequality within the law. It denied certain people equal rights within the law. But now what they've done is they've expanded the law even further by saying, well, if someone has asked for euthanasia while competent and now has become incompetent, then they can still have euthanasia, death by lethal injection. Well, this is a serious problem because, once again, it denies someone the ability to change their mind. Because what happens is if you're declared incompetent by law, you now cannot change your mind. So there was the case in the Netherlands, there was the court case in the Netherlands that was just completed last year of the woman who had previously had requested euthanasia while competent, and then while incompetent they came to do it and she was resisting and saying no. So they put the sedative in her coffee because she continued to say no, she continued to resist. And then she continued to resist even after receiving the sedative in her coffee. So then the doctor asked the family to hold her down as she was given the lethal injection. This is the kind of thing that you lead into when you allow euthanasia for people who are incompetent. There's another serious problem. The doctor cannot confirm anymore that the person continues to want to die by lethal injection because they're considered incompetent. So you're going to have someone lethally injecting someone and you cannot confirm that they continue to want to die. It opens up the question. I also go one step further. It actually is against what the Supreme Court of Canada said in the euthanasia decision, the Carter decision, because they said that the person would have to be competent, and this will allow euthanasia for incompetent people.
So does Bill C-7 allow euthanasia where mental illness is the sole underlying medical condition? And if so, could someone with depression potentially end their life?
Well, this isn't actually an issue that angers me, Hal, because the bill put in a line saying that mental illness is not a disability, disease, etc. under Bill C-7, but in fact that doesn't stop euthanasia for mental illness. So they've actually they're playing a game with us because the bill says that, but that in fact doesn't stop euthanasia for mental illness because the law says euthanasia is allowed for physical or psychological suffering. And psychological suffering includes issues around mental illness. So in fact, this bill does allow euthanasia for mental illness, even though they're telling us it doesn't. And I really get angry when they play these games with us because they're telling us one thing and it actually doesn't actually say that. It actually doesn't definitively do that. They would have actually defined psychological suffering in the bill in order to have to say that we're going to prevent euthanasia for people with mental illness. Now, Canadians clearly don't want people with mental illness dying by euthanasia, and so that's why they tossed that line within the bill, but that actually doesn't prevent euthanasia for mental illness. It's a real card game that I'm really upset about.
Do you believe that the safeguards that are included in our assisted suicide laws are written with loosely defined language to allow the laws to be maybe redefined over time?
In fact, Hal, that's exactly what the bills have done. The bills have not properly defined the language within the legislation, and they did that on purpose. So even the original bill did that. What it did is it said that your natural death had to be reasonably foreseeable, but then it didn't define that. And then it had several little loopholes within it. It said that there was a 10-day waiting period in the original legislation, but then it said the doctor could waive the 10-day waiting period. And now, only 2.5 years later, we're actually going to get rid of the 10-day waiting period when someone's defined as terminally ill. So, the whole thing is not designed actually to protect people in a difficult time of their life, because this is actually what we're talking about. Euthanasia is not something that people are demanding. If you look at the data, they're not demanding it because they're in horrific pain. That's what was sold to us. But, there's very few people in that condition actually demanding euthanasia. Usually it's someone who's going through a very difficult time of their life, and they're a human being who's emotionally and psychologically connected to their physical condition. They're asking for euthanasia because they're at a low time in their life. And this is what we're dealing with here. And these laws are not defined on purpose in order to allow expansion over time. We could actually have a whole show on how the law actually expanded between when it was passed until today, just on that alone, looking at how it's being reinterpreted by people who are actually doing euthanasia.
Last December, the Delta Hospice Society was ordered by the province of BC to provide euthanasia or lose its funding. How has Delta really responded to those demands, and what happened since?
Yeah, so this battle's been going on with the Delta Hospice Society, and I have to first make this very clear. The Delta Hospice Society is an independent organization. It's not a government organization. Yes, it receives funding for the healthcare service it provides, but the hospice was actually built with community money. The building itself is not that old. It was built with fundraised dollars in the Delta region of British Columbia, and it did not receive provincial funding for the building itself. So we're talking about an independent organization that is saying we will not do euthanasia. That's contra to what we believe. In fact, in their charter as an organization, as their nonprofit charter says, we do not hasten death. So what the government has told them is you're going to hasten death, you're going to do euthanasia, you're going to do lethal injection, you're going to do this, and if you don't do it, we're going to pull your funding. And they're also intimidating them within that same context, because the letter they've received from the government is not only saying that we're going to pull your funding, it's saying we're going to take over your building. Take over your building. It's an independent organization. It's not part of the LIN or the local healthcare unit. It was not even funded by the healthcare unit. It's an independent organization. They're talking about taking it over. This is a very, disgusting thing that's going on if you consider what the government's talking about doing. The Delta Hospice has been responding by saying we're not going to do it. They're seeking legal advice, and the battle's far from over.
Alex, what about the conscience rights of medical professionals? I mean, can Canadian doctors refuse to participate in euthanasia?
So the conscience rights issue is a provincial matter, and so therefore in Manitoba, for instance, doctors have the right of conscience, and they don't have to participate, they don't have to do the act. Whereas in Ontario, the College of Physicians has said that a physician has to do what they call an effective referral, which means referral for the purpose of the act. So you have different rules in different places. So in fact, the answer is a yes and a no depending on where you live. Now the difficulty is, for instance, in Ontario, where the College of Physicians is saying that doctors have to do what they call an effective referral. That means referral for actually doing euthanasia. Doctors are saying, well, I don't believe in euthanasia, so I'm not going to do it, but I'm also not going to refer because I'm not going to send you to the killer. I'm not going to do it. And I think when I say killer, some people might feel uncomfortable, but in fact, we need to call it what it is. Euthanasia is lethal injection. And if you look at the actual law, the law creates an exception to homicide within the criminal code. So if you want to find where the law on euthanasia is, it's under homicide in the criminal code, and they created an exception to it. So in fact, that's what it is. So the fact that physicians are being pressured, some of them have left Ontario. We've lost physicians. Some of them have gone to the US or to other jurisdictions where they're not being pressured or forced to do euthanasia or refer for it.
Now, what about mature minors? These would be children who are considered mature enough to consent to their own medical treatment. Are the Trudeau Liberals possibly going to allow these kids to choose assisted suicide?
So in the original legislation, the law says you have to be 18 and you have to be competent, a competent adult. It also says that you have to be capable of making the decision. So therefore, this whole other question of, people who have become incompetent wasn't part of it. There's been a lot of debate about children. Now, Bill C-7 does not extend euthanasia to children, but at the same time, the government has agreed to starting what they call a 5-year review of the law, which is going to start in June of 2020. So one of the things that actually angers me about Bill C-7 is the government didn't have to do anything. They could have left it alone. The court decision happened. They didn't appeal the court decision. Therefore, whether I like it or not, the court decision was the law of the land because it was not appealed. And they had already agreed to do a 5-year review to start in June of 2020. So therefore, what happens in the near future after the review is done of the law might then mean that they're going to extend euthanasia to children, because there's a lot of discussion about that. Belgium has already done that. The Netherlands allows euthanasia for babies, newborns. So, it's possible it will happen in Canada.
Alex, where do you really see this issue headed over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I see that we need a culture shift in a big way. So the fact that euthanasia is legal does not mean that euthanasia should be occurring. Now, we've had a huge number of euthanasias done already. So last year there was over 5,000 euthanasia deaths in Canada, and there's been over 13,000 since it was legalized. So what we've had is that we've had a fast social acceptance of euthanasia, and the numbers have grown very quickly. But the reality is the culture needs to recognize the importance of caring, and this is what's been missing. There's a couple things. First of all, the government did promise a huge influx of dollars for palliative care at the time of legalizing euthanasia, and we really haven't seen that. So that's the first issue. But secondly, people who believe in a caring society need to step up and recognize the importance of being with, caring for others. Recognize that when my neighbor is going through a difficult time in their life, that they're human. They're a human being. They need care. They need support. People choose euthanasia usually not because of deep physical pain and they feel there's no other way to deal with it. Usually what's happening is they're going through a very difficult time in their life. They're feeling that their life has lost purpose. They feel their life has lost any value. They're wondering what their future holds, and they have fear of that future. So they're seeking euthanasia, or someone's presenting the idea of euthanasia to them, and this is why they're going down that road. A caring society really changes that. We recognize the importance of the human person. We recognize that suffering alone is very difficult, but when you're with someone and you care about them, that in fact you can diminish that nature of suffering greatly. We also recognize that people go through depression, Al. A lot of people go through deep depression. And when someone cares about them and they're with them and they spend time with them, somehow that depression is not the same anymore because we feel our life is valuable. We've been, how would you say, affirmed in our value. This is where society needs to go.
Alex Schadenberg is the Executive Director of Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. Thanks so much for your time today, Alex.
Thank you, Hal.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.